Hi mga Cubs, PJTV ako pala ito, sana sa buting kalagayan at malusoging pangangatawan. Ano pa? Click mo na ang notification bell sa YouTube channel, sa Facebook page, paki-follow, sa TikTok account, pa-follow na rin. Maraming salamat. Huwag kalimutan mag-like and share ha. Tara, umpisa na natin ang video, ang topic na mainit-init pa. Let's go!
And just to open a new topic, so I understand that today the Senate Committee on Women is holding its last hearing on the Anisco case. So, not to preempt the committee report and etc., but off the top of your head, what legislative ideas have you gotten from this hearing? I'm sure you've seen a lot of problems that in our system that were exposed because of this case. So from the citizenship to the election. So what sort of reforms do you have in mind that have come out of this hearing?
Senator Win and Senator Villanueva both filed bills with respect to banning Pogos. I just advised them to ban the definition of Pogos and not just Pogos per se, because they might simply just come up with a new name, Pogo, Pigo, Pego, Pago. So what exactly do you want to ban? And you should define it, not merely the name of the game. And I think those bills are pending before the Committee on Ways and Means and will be reported out probably within this week, according to Senator Win. Number two would be a pending bill as well with respect to our immigration laws. Do you know how convoluted our immigration laws are? The United States has what they call the INS, Immigration and Naturalization Service, which actually issues visas. That's how it's done in most of the countries. Here, it's a bit different. The agency assigned to issue visas would be the Department of Foreign Affairs here in the Philippines and through its consulates and embassies worldwide. The DFA and the Bureau of Immigration don't talk. They don't share information. The Bureau of Immigration has no idea who the DFA issued a visa to, for how long and for what purpose. First time they get a chance to see it is when the visitor arrives. And if the visa was issued properly, they allow him or her entry. Actually, it's very easy to get into the Philippines. What's ironic is, it's so difficult to get out. About 16,000 Filipinos were offloaded from planes, simply because they didn't look right, which is basically based on profiling. What's ironic is, it's so easy to get in, it's so difficult to get out for Filipinos. Shouldn't that be the lookout of the country they're going to? Very much like it should be our lookout with respect to the visitors coming to the Philippines. But ironically, we're open with respect to visitors entering, and we're quite strict with respect to Filipinos going out. These things should be changed. These things should be amended. And there are pending legislation on these matters as we speak.
Sir, in terms of our citizenship rules and laws, so based on the hearing, like it's most likely that the foreign national was able to obtain Philippine citizenship and was able to run and win an elected office. So how do you reform those loopholes, plug those loopholes in the citizenship aspect and the elections aspect, sir?
Ten Commandments said, "Thou shalt not steal." The only way this was done was because of corruption. Our laws are complete with respect to who can become citizens of the Philippines. For example, natural-born Filipinos are those Filipinos who are born of a Filipino mother or father. So if your father or mother is a Filipino, even if one is a foreigner, you're a natural-born Filipino citizen. If both of them are foreigners, then you follow the nationality of either your mom or your dad, depending on the law of the state they come from. So if you're not a natural-born Filipino, the only way by which you can be a Filipino would be through naturalization through our courts or through an act of Congress. If you didn't go through either of the three, if you don't fall under either of the three, then you're not Filipino. That's very clear in our laws. So if Mayor Alice Guo did not qualify under any of those three circumstances, clearly corruption is the only reason why she was able to garner and get a birth certificate and even a Philippine passport. Our laws are complete with respect to violations of the law in exchange for money. It's more an issue of enforcement, I guess, and less an issue of legislation in that regard and in that aspect.
Lastly, sir, so taking on that point, so what likely charges, criminal and administrative, will be
I think
filed?
she's already facing charges violating our immigration laws. That's the reason why she's being detained right now at Camp Crame. And should criminal cases filed against her for human trafficking or qualified human trafficking be dismissed at some point, she would still be held by the Bureau of Immigration for violation of our immigration laws. The ending of that would be deportation to her country of origin. But deportation will not occur until and unless she has faced criminal sanctions for whatever violation of Philippine laws she may have committed. Again, number one and foremost among which would be qualified trafficking.
How about the people who aided her to be able to?
Sheila Go, I think, has been charged of qualified trafficking as well in violation of election laws. But you know what saddens me is that these people both claim to be Filipino citizens. Actually, they can speak Filipino. My question has always been, where are the Chinese masterminds that are being pointed to? Why are they not being held to account? Why aren't they being hauled to any hearing? Why can't we acquire jurisdiction over them? Why are we simply focusing on the Filipinos, quote unquote, involved in this whole scheme? I hope at some point in time, the real masterminds, allegedly mostly Chinese, would face justice, the bar of justice rather than simply their cohorts and Filipinos aiding and abetting them here, facing the music, so to speak.
Sir, why then is the Senate concluding its investigation when all these questions have been left unanswered? Is it that?
Wala ka magawa sa hapon, no? Hindi manood ng... I asked him if he has a lot of spare time and simply watches the hearings. It's the discretion always of the committee chairman. If you notice in the last two hearings, they cannot get anything out of the resource persons anymore, given the pendency of the cases. They're well within their rights to invoke their right against self-incrimination, given that cases have been filed against them. And quite frankly, I don't think you can get anything out of them anymore, unless something crops up, a new witness comes out, then a hearing can easily be called again. But for the meantime, we can't actually keep on doing this too for the next 6 months until we finish the third regular session.
Sir, so who then beyond the Senate can answer the questions that you posed, especially regarding holding into account possible Chinese masterminds of this scheme?
You know, the truth has a way of coming out. Sometimes not when we want it to come out, but it will come out. If and when that time comes, the Senate will be ready and open to be the forum and serve as the forum for that truth to be spoken about and to for the people to hear. But right now, it's difficult. It's not that easy to ferret out the truth. Even, for example, allegations against the former administration. It took 2-3 years for it to actually come out fully and to be talked about fully and openly. So the same is true here, perhaps. It's only a question of time, but I'm of the belief that it will come out.
Sir, which allegations are these?
The ones being investigated by the House.
Okay.
Diba?
Thank you, Dreo. Up next, Ms. Joanna Balyaran of TG Press.
Hi, sir. Good morning. Joanna
Good morning,
Balyaran
ma'am.
from GG Press. Sir, there are calls for Vice President Sara Duterte to be impeached. No, I remember former Senator Trillanes has said that he's planning to file an impeachment case before the House of Representatives. What do you think about these calls? And is the Senate ready to put the Vice President on trial once the impeachment process gets to the Senate?
Several points. Impeachment rumors I only heard from Senator Trillanes and the Vice President herself. This has been denied by the House thus far. So I dare say that I will not comment on it because it might reach us. In fact, I went a step further by reminding our colleagues not to speak about and to avoid as much as possible speaking about possible impeachment cases that may be filed against the Senate, at the risk of being accused of prejudging a case that might reach us. But should it reach us, the Constitution provides and our rules provide that we must hear it. Under our rules as well, if the President is impeached, like what you saw with former President Estrada, it's the Chief Justice that will preside. His co-presiding officer would be the Senate President. But if any official lower than the President is impeached, Vice President down to the Constitutional Commissioners, Justice of the Supreme Court, it'll be the Senate President that will preside over such impeachment hearings and or trial. Kaya kung may alam ka na hindi ko alam, sabihan mo ako para makapag-research na ako ng rules of procedure uli because it's been quite a while.
Okay, sir, thank you.
Sorry, I said, so if you know of something that I do not know about regarding this, kindly advise me ahead of time so that I can begin reading on and studying on the rules of procedure because it's been a while since I practiced law, notwithstanding the fact that that is my profession.
Okay, sir. Sir, on a different question, I
Yes,
know
ma'am.
you've made your stance about the International Criminal Court rejoining the ICC, or the ICC in general. you've made some points about it publicly na, no? So, can you explain to us or can you walk through how, if ever the Philippines decides to rejoin the ICC, how would that work? Can you tell us of the process? And
The Constitution provides that the President of the Republic of the Philippines is the chief architect of foreign policy of the country. So therefore, he's the one solely authorized to enter into treaties. According to the Supreme Court, also to get out of treaties. The only role of the Senate really is to concur and or reject a treaty entered into by the executive. The House has no role with respect to this procedure and or process. So the Senate can pass all the resolutions it wants, encouraging, calling on, etc. But at the end of the day, it's the decision and discretion of the President, whether or not we will rejoin membership in the ICC. On the current issue pending, again, it's difficult to comment on rumors and mere allegations that an arrest warrant will be issued, etc., etc. I'd rather not, unless it's already here, it's already there. Then perhaps I can and will comment on it. But right now, I cannot and I will not, given the fact that it's not yet firm and definite. Rumors have been spreading that a member of the Senate, a warrant of arrest might be issued to a member of the Senate. We will cross the bridge when we get there. But at this point in time, given that we're not a member of the ICC, I am not aware of the legal efficacy of such a warrant here in our country, unless they seek the help of local courts to enforce it. Any order, decision of the local court, we will follow, but not one solely emanating from the ICC at this point in time.
thank you, sir.
Up next, Rena Bernal of CNA.
Yes, ma'am.
Don't worry, Senator. I won't make you comment on a rumor.
On
Buena
what?
Bernal, Philippines correspondent for CNA Channel News Asia. Sir, you serve at the pleasure of the majority of your chamber, but a healthy democracy requires an effective opposition. And right now we have the Makabayan far left bloc, Makabayan bloc. You have the perennially losing Liberal Democratic slate, and you have the Dutertes and their allies. So my question is, from your viewpoint, who do you think of these forces are the most effective opposition in the country in terms of issue-based democratic discourse? And come 2025, who do you think is the most effective opposition in terms of winnability? So two different things, sir, in terms of maintaining a healthy democracy and in terms of winning next year.
I've never viewed opposition and administration as being monopolized by one group. In fact, it's not really a black or white issue. It's a lot of grays. I'll give you an example. After saying a mouthful against the president and accusing him of a lot of things, former President Duterte was quite nice during the nomination and proclamation of their candidates in PDP Laban, when he said he sees nothing wrong with the current administration. And then you have the specter of former Senator De Lima expressing praises and thanks to President Marcos when she was released, and yesterday I think saying that they will never ally with the Marcos administration because there are a lot of issues left unanswered. So I guess it shifts, it changes. But what's important is not everyone is saying amen and yes to whatever it is the administration says. Whether it's monopolized by one group, held by several groups, it's still political opposition that makes for a vibrant democracy. I'll give you an example, another example. Take, for example, Senator Pangilinan, who's running. He's running under LP.
Check him out.
He's in a radio program with Chel Jokno and Bamakino, right? These are it. Chel Jokno, I think, is running as a nominee of Akbayan party list. Kiko Pangilinan was nominated by the Liberal Party, and Bamakino will most likely run under KNP, another party, not even LP. These are all opposition figures, quote unquote, clearly not aligned with the administration, but they are unanimous in praising and agreeing with the President with respect to his stand on the West Philippine Sea. I think that is a fair assessment they're giving to this administration. While they're not open to having an alliance with the administration or any of its political parties, they have been critical on things they disagree on, but they have been praising the administration as well with respect to things that they're doing right. And again, the same is true with the President. So if you go a step further, the Vice President is not even a member of PDP Laban. In fact, the son of the former president, Baste, only became a member of PDP Laban the other day. He belonged to their local party. The vice president has her own party. So it's not party-based. Being an opposition is not party-based in the Philippines. It has never been. Perhaps it's more personality-based. And if you're dealing with personalities, some days are better than others. Some days they're out-and-out opposition. Some days they're actually not necessarily pro-administration, but simply decide to keep their peace about certain issues. But that they are able to speak out against the administration whenever they want to, that's what makes for a vibrant democracy.
No comment on winnability, sir.
On?
Winnability. Which do you think of these forces?
I'm a student of surveys, man. So I tend to look at surveys, and I tend to believe surveys. Not all, some, but I do believe in surveys. But surveys are mere snapshots. I can tell you, for example, based on Pulse Asia, based on Okta, or based on SWS, who are most likely winners at this point in time. But since elections are months down the road, these things can still change. As long as you're within striking distance. That means to say, anyone in the surveys from 1 to 24 or 28, depending on the margins, have a good chance of winning.
Sir, your insights, speaking of a Congress that doesn't say amen and yes all the time, seems not to manifest in terms of just the general approach towards the office of the Vice President Sara Duterte, contrasted, for example, to a 5-minute approval of the budget of Vice President Lenny before, even under the Duterte administration. And now they're proposing to slash her office's budget. Just your insights, sir, on slashing the consultancy fees, the rental fees of satellite offices of the Vice President in favor of YPP. And the context I'm asking this is that depending on how you see it, both are vehicles of either patronage politics or are actual platforms of public service. YPP with the general notion of the Filipino citizens that you need a lawmaker's endorsement for it, but it's actually a health department budget item.
That's a mouthful. Let me see. Let me start by saying that Congress, to be fair, the House in particular, took a different stand from that of the President. You have to understand. The President proposed the budget of the entire executive department, including that of the Office of the Vice President. So last year, the President, through the DBM Secretary, Pangandaman, proposed confidential funds for the Office of the Vice President. That was part of their policy. The House decided to remove it. The Senate agreed with the House to remove it. So that makes for your checks and balance. For this year, the proposed budget for 2025 was slashed by the House. The Senate does not have a report yet on this, if it will agree or disagree in whole or in part. But from the point of view of Congress, the Vice President said in her own words, you decide, I don't care. What will you do? If as CEO of your company, for example, or member of the board of directors, and you're deciding on the budget for next year, your one of your executives, one of your offices, one of your subsidiaries say, I don't care, you decide. What will you do? I guess that's the predicament of the House. In the Senate, she attended. It was a bit difficult, but she attended and answered the questions. So the Senate will cross that bridge when the budget gets to us and reaches us. But this is not the first time that the budget of the Office of the Vice President was reduced. It was done during the time of former Vice President Binay. In fact, it was cut in half, too. They cut the budget of the Vice President, then Vice President Binay, by 200 million, when his total budget was only 400 million. So this was cut by more than half, from 2+ billion to 733 million. And if you're talking of patronage politics, and if you're accusing the House of patronage politics, well, I guess the same is true for the Office of the Vice President. Why will she have her own and not simply give it to the Department of Health or to the Department of Social Welfare and Development? But this does not yet include, bear in mind, the budget for the Vice President's security detail as well, which is a lot. In fact, bigger, I think, than the social programs of the Vice President. So we'll see. The House did not or has not touched that yet.
All right, sir. Thank you, sir.
Next question will be from Jim Gomez of AP.
Sir, wala pa storya.
Long time.
Hi, good morning, sir. Sir, sir, aside from the reciprocal access agreement of Japan, there are 3 more such SOFA agreements being negotiated by the Philippines with France, Canada, and New Zealand. My question is, do you think this web of security alliances will make any difference, given that difference in pushing aggression back in the South China Sea? Given that China has remained belligerent despite the major acts of deterrence by countries, big countries like the US and major powers in Asia like Japan and Australia?
Well, I won't use the word belligerent. China has not really been belligerent, but they've been aggressive. Aggressiveness, there's a wide difference between aggressiveness and belligerence. I believe that these agreements, the RAA and similar agreements with our allies, will enable us to, as I said earlier, provide an effective deterrence while our military is not strong enough to provide that deterrence. Number two, I think face is important to China. And the fact that there are a lot of countries speaking out against it is actually serving as a deterrent too. And that is what I think the president has been able to do successfully. He was able to bring world attention to this particular issue and to rally our allies and those similarly minded states to support the Philippines in fighting against a bully in this particular region. And he was able to explain and make these states and governments understand that what's happening in the West Philippine Sea is not isolated, and that it should be their concern as well, that this should be elevated at one of their top concerns as well, that it is not only a problem of the Philippines. I guess these agreements highlight the success of the president with respect to achieving this goal.
Sir, before becoming Senate President, you were regarded as an eminent backroom political strategist. So I want to ask I want to ask you this question. Sir, what's the remedy when a country like China that does not comply, defies, ignores domestic and international laws when they do not align with its interests?
That used to be my day job before, running campaigns other than my own. We have to understand that China, like the Philippines, has its own domestic audience to cater to. That is true with other countries. With respect to whatever conflict, issue, or disagreement, countries have their respective domestic audiences that they should cater to. China is no different. And the last thing you want is to lose face before that domestic audience. But on the reverse, the last thing you also want is for the circumstances to force you to do something and enter into something such as war simply because you wanted to save face. I think that is one thing that both governments know, should understand, and should respect and pursue. The effect would be, we won't take so seriously things being said against us with respect to this issue because we disagree. The same is true now with them. But it's very important to have a basic understanding between the two countries. And that has opened up, I think, only fairly recently between the Philippines and China. Because for the past several months, they've been talking through media. They've been talking through fora, various fora, instead of actually engaging each other. I don't see any problem with respect to engaging China. Meaning sitting down, talking, saying no to everything they want, very much like what you asked earlier, ma'am. If I've met the Chinese ambassador, what does he say? What do I say? We can agree to disagree. And there's nothing wrong with engaging China either on a one-on-one or on a regional setting. What's important is that we are engaging each other, talking and trying to find solutions while we haven't come to an agreement regarding this matter. This can go on for the next 10 or 20 years. But if engagement provides for an easier path towards peace, then I would be willing to do that. Even if it takes 2,000 diplomatic protests to avoid war, I would be willing to do that. For those who are asking and saying, what, we'll file another diplomatic protest? What would that do? So what would you want to do? Do you want the Philippines to fire the first shot? I think the answer, if you ask anybody, would be no. So engagement is the key with respect to international law. Engagement is the key towards convincing other nations to support our cause. And hopefully at some point in time, also convince another state to believe as you do. Aristotle defines politics as the art of influencing other people. I think that's the objective of engagement, to influence how other people think, including how other countries think. And hopefully in the course of time, without going on the brink of war, we won't be able to do that. Unless they're able to do that to us. Hopefully not.
Sir, lastly, sir.
Yes, sir.
Because of your background, your deep political readings, I can't help but ask this question. What is your prognosis of this increasingly volatile relationship between President Marcos and the Duterte family in terms of next year, the midterm elections, and 2028, the presidential election?
Volatile is a kind word. I think the Vice President just said about a couple of days ago that they were never friends. So I don't know what relationship you're describing as volatile means. How shall I answer it? Clearly, the Dutertes still hold political clout, not only in Davao, but also in Mindanao. Clearly, a lot of people still believe and support the Dutertes, but not against necessarily the Marcoses, because Aimee is somewhere in the middle. But at the end of the day, it's not a presidential elections. It's not a presidential election, rather. If a Duterte runs and a Marcos will run for the Senate, it's a collegial election. They don't necessarily have to rob votes or get votes from each other. It's a collegial elections where people can vote for a Duterte, if a Duterte runs for the Senate, and vote for a Marcos. So I don't think it will come to a confrontation in this particular election.